This Presidential Distinguished Speaker Series is designed to bring some of the nation's leading and most provocative thought leaders from various disciplines and professional fields of study around the globe to our university. Because we believe that exposing the university community to a broad range of views, to a broad range of perspectives and angles on just a myriad of opportunities and challenges that we are facing as a nation, that is really in keeping with Morgan's mission, our mission of serving as this premier public urban research university that is rooted in HBCU space. And so, quite simply, this series is designed with a high degree of intentionality. It is designed to promote what we called mind expansion, to enable you to wrestle with the issues of the past, with the challenges of the present, and the possibilities of tomorrow. And so before I go on for another minute and a half, I would like to take a moment for you to hear a few words from the chair of our Faculty Senate, Dr. Ghali, who is here with us to say a few words before I move forward and we get to the introduction of our speaker. Please join me in welcoming the chair of our University Senate, Dr. Ghali.
What an honor. Good evening, everybody. I would like to extend my star salute to our President David Wilson for bringing the national thought leader, Dr. Shaun Harper, to Morgan State University. When I say I extend my star salute, what I mean by that is the greetings coming from more than 15,000 scholars from around the world who are connected to a network of scholars called Star Scholars Network, to which I happen to be serving as the president, very proudly, from the National Treasure. So, reaching for the stars is something that every college or university encourages their students to do. Morgan is an institution where we make our students realize energy, their own internal energy, and then show them how energy can transform from heat to light. It's not just a physics lesson, it's a life lesson too. When a Morganite beams, he or she helps others shine. That's how we lead the world. Tonight, we are celebrating one of the brightest shining stars in academia. We have Dr. Shaun Harper with us, who is President-elect of American Education Researchers Association. Soon, he's going to enlighten us with his riveting story, and our lives are never going to be the same. Star Scholars Network is an international forum of scholars that advances global social mobility through research and advocacy. Our publications and newsletters reach more than 15,000 members around the world. Dr. Krishna Bista, the editor-in-chief, is a Morgan professor. Can you stand up, Dr. Bista, so we can recognize you? One of our advisors, Dr. Glenda Prime, our dean, is also in audience. Thank you. And among us are many star scholars here today. I would like to say thank you for joining us. Yes, we are proud to lead the world, and our headquarters are snugly housed at this national treasure. Thank you, President Wilson. Professor Harper, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ghali, as well. You know, Morgan has one of the most diverse faculties in all of higher education in the United States, and we are very, very pleased to see our faculty take on these leadership roles all over the world. And so thank you for representing 15,000 scholars from around the world and to lead that effort here at Morgan. And so tonight, we turn our attention to hear from an expert on race, an expert on campus climates, and an expert on student success in higher education. Many of you know that in this series, we actually seek out individuals who are on the cutting edge of their scholarship, on the cutting edge of innovation, individuals who we say have this kind of uncanny ability to look around the corner, look down the street and around the corner, and see things that those of us who don't have that kind of vision can see. And so this is who we have with us tonight. And we search out these individuals and bring them here because we want to show our students what it means when you walk past the Student Center and you see that motto that says, growing the future, leading the world. This is about you, and it's about exposing you to individuals who embrace that. Now, last comment. We here at Morgan, we value the free expression of ideas. We value free expression of thoughts, and we remain open, as always, to diverse points of view. As president, I understand the importance of our students being exposed to a multifaceted, if you will, perspective, for such views often lead to greatness in thought and greatness in possibilities. And so with that said, I'm happy that you have joined us this evening, and now it is my distinct pleasure to introduce the student who is a member of the Morgan Leadership Circle and who is a sophomore accounting major who will officially introduce Shaun Harper. Please join me in welcoming our PLC student leader this evening.
Good evening. Welcome to the third installment of the Fall 2019 Presidential Speaker Series. My name is McCall Brown, and I am a fellow of the President's Leadership Circle, and it is my honor to introduce you to Shaun R. Harper. Shaun R. Harper, PhD, is a provost professor in the Rosier School of Education and the Marshall School of Business at the University of Southern California. He is also the Clifford and Betty Allen Chair in Urban Leadership, founder and executive director of the USC Race and Equity Center, president-elect of the American Educational Research Association, and past president of the Association for the Study of Higher Education. Dr. Harper's research focuses primarily on race, gender, and other dimensions of equity in an array of organizational contexts, including K-12 schools, colleges and universities, and corporations. He has published more than 100 peer-reviewed journal articles and other academic publications and has received more than $13 million in research grants. Johns Hopkins University Press is publishing his 13th book, Race Matters in Colleges. His research has been cited in more than 11,000 published studies. The Journal of Negro Education, Review of Research in Education, Harvard Educational Review, the Journal of Higher Education and Teachers College Record are a sample of journals in which his studies have been published. The New York Times, Los Angeles Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, and thousands of other news outlets have quoted Professor Harper and featured his research. He has been interviewed on CNN, ESPN, NPR, and has been recognized in Education Week as one of the 10 most influential professors in the field of education. Dr. Harper spent a decade on the University of Pennsylvania faculty, where he was tenured full professor and founding executive director of the Center for the Study of Race and Equity in Education. His bachelor's degree is from Albany State, a historically Black university in Georgia, and his PhD is from Indiana University. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Harper.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. That was really beautiful.
Thank you.
Very generous.
Here's your-
All right. Thank you. Good evening. It is wonderful to see you all. I imagine that it has been a long day for lots of folks, so I'm going to try to make this evening very stimulating for all of us. Let me start with some serious articulation of appreciation to President Wilson for inviting me. It means a lot to me. I don't need this. Okay, Great. We have this one. All right. Great. There it is. Okay. What most people don't know, including you, is that I'm a super fan of yours. You're a person that I've been wanting to know. Really, I watch the way that you so brilliantly lead this fine university. You are a legend among presidents, not just HBCU presidents, but all presidents. So I really have been watching President Wilson's extraordinary leadership from afar. So to have been invited by him to participate in a thing that sounds really distinguished. I mean, it has distinguished in the title. Was a real honor. It is not lost on me that there are so many brilliant minds and inspiring people around the world who you could have invited to be here tonight, but you invited me. That really means a lot to me. So thank you. And thank you to the Star Scholars Network for your support and for all that you do for higher education here in the U.S. and around the world. It was great to hear a few words about that network. Let me also say really how especially grateful I am to Stacy, who has been the person that I've been corresponding with for months. Stacy has been on top of every single detail. It's been a real pleasure to work with her. I got to say that, this is part Stacy, but this is also part cultural. That when I got here to campus tonight, I was in an Uber. Stacy insisted that they send somebody to pick me up in a car, and I was like, no, I'll just take an Uber. I'm real low maintenance. I should have just gone with Stacy's plan, right? So I'm in the Uber. He doesn't know quite how to get me to where I'm supposed to be. So I see Officer Ponce in his police car, and I asked the Uber, just stop here. I got out of the car and I went over to the police car to Officer Ponce, and he was lovely. He was just so warm and genuine and so helpful. That reminds me of the culture of the place that I called home when I was a student at Albany State. A real culture of helpfulness. When Officer Ponce dropped me off here at the Student Center, Stacy was there waiting, and immediately I felt a strong sense of hospitality. I felt right at home. This is not my first time at Morgan. I've been here 4 or 5 times, but this is my first time speaking at Morgan. I'm going to try to do a good job tonight, because I love to be invited back, because not only am I a real fan and appreciator of your president, but I am a huge appreciator of this institution and the important role that it plays in the landscape of higher education. I would be remiss if I didn't also just take just a second to shout out my very favorite Morgan State University alumnus, Gloria Latson-Billings. She loves this place, and I love her. She is in part of the reason why I love Morgan so much, as a matter of fact, because this place really found a superstar and just made her, just accelerated her stardom, accelerated her brilliance. She and I share now, officially, a really strong Morgan connection. Okay, let me get into the heart of the talk for tonight. I have titled this simply, Why More Black Students Must Choose Black Colleges. There are 2 words that are punctuated here. More. That is my way of acknowledging that there are black folk here, and there are black folk who have always been here and will always be here. We just need more of us here. Must is the other word. We are in a period in the lifespan of many historically black colleges and universities, a period of urgency, where we must get more Black people to recognize the value of these institutions for a multitude of reasons. I'm going to walk us through those reasons tonight. But let me do start here with a real acknowledgement of the genius that is Beyonce. I went to an HBCU, a really amazing one. I'm very proud to have gone to Albany State University. It is a place that I think of often, as a matter of fact. I also think of Morehouse College, where my youngest brother went. Right? I think of the landscape of other HBCUs, Dillard University, where my good friend Walter Kimbrough is president. I'm often thinking of HBCUs. But Homecoming, Beyonce's Netflix film of the Coachella performance, it really landed on me in an unexpected way. It renewed for me a real sense of enthusiasm about Black colleges. I didn't even realize that my enthusiasm for HBCUs had perhaps fizzled somehow. But it was a real jolt. If you hadn't seen it, you should see it. It is an incredible show. I was so inspired by this show that I wrote about it in Inside Higher Ed. How Homecoming really showcases the beauty and the importance of Black colleges. Now, I made very clear in the article that HBCUs are more than their bands. Beyonce also showed us that, as a matter of fact, in the film. Sure, it was an extraordinary musical performance. And the band that she had in the bandstand on the stage with her at Coachella was most talented, most inspiring. But Beyonce also, talked about what having TSU, Texas Southern University, and Prairie View, A&M, meant for her as a young person to see those fine, historically Black institutions in her neighborhood, in her neck of the woods, how that had an effect on her confidence. She also peppered the film with just extraordinary quotes from Black intellectuals. The kinds of Black intellectualism that is integrated across the curriculum here at Morgan. It was integrated throughout that film. I can't say to you enough how this particular film, it stimulated something in me that I think is going to now become a national movement. I will say more about this national movement in a bit. Let me be scholarly for a moment. Sorry for the abrupt transition. I'm going straight from Beyonce to scholarship, right? Ontario Wooden, who is the senior administrator at North Carolina Central University, and my best friend Lori Patton and I published an article a decade ago on access and equity efforts for African American students in U.S. higher education. We published this article in the Journal of Higher Education. It is one of my most widely cited pieces. In the article, my co-authors and I chronicle a series of policy efforts to increase the number of African American students in colleges and universities. Of course, we talk about the Morrill Land Grant Acts and the HBCUs that were born of that policy effort. One of the other things, though, that we talk about in this particular paper is a data point. We say in the article that although a few African Americans were allowed to matriculate at predominantly white institutions throughout this era, the era that we were writing about here was the 1940s. 90% of all African American degree holders in the late 1940s have been educated at HBCUs. 90% of black folk with college degrees had gotten them from places like Albany and Morgan, Winston-Salem, Fayetteville State, Tougaloo, Fisk, Wiley College. Now, I know all of them. We can keep going. On the eve of desegregation, we continue. African Americans accounted for less than 1% of entering first-year students at predominantly white institutions. Now, let me be clear. I appreciate the legislative efforts that went into integrating schools. I appreciate black activists and others who demanded that predominantly white institutions take off the chains of segregation from their gates to allow more African Americans to enter. I gotta say though, what I don't appreciate here in 2019 is the shift that has occurred in black student enrollments in American higher education. What you see here are data from the US Department of Education. These are 2017 data. As you will see, in 1980, 17.3% of black students in American higher education were enrolled at HBCUs. As you will see over the period here, there's been a significant decline in the percentage of black students choosing HBCUs for their post-secondary destination. This troubles me, especially because I know historically that these were our only options for the longest time. As recently as the late 1940s, more than 90% of black folk who were in college were at black colleges. How in the world is it that in 2019, 91% of black folk who are in college are not enrolled at historically black colleges and universities? That troubles me. It ought to trouble you. It ought to worry you. Even if you feel stable and secure here at Morgan, you know, our cultural orientation is not one of individualism. So even if you're thriving here, which I know you are, we got to think about the collective we, the collective universe of historically black colleges and universities. We ought to be concerned about their sustainability, given these declining enrollments. What I also know as a higher education researcher is that there have been declining state investments in all kinds of institutions, not just HBCUs, but really across the landscape of post-secondary institutions in public systems of higher education. It is going to be enrollments that ultimately save and sustain struggling HBCUs. Let me also say why this hits a personal note for me. Albany State, the place that I love and adore, with its tremendous black cultural assets, was recently merged with the nearby predominantly white institution there in Albany. That worries me. It disgusts me. Not because I'm disgusted by white people, that's not it. But it's because I love black culture so much. It's because I love the black educational plan that had been so masterfully developed and delivered there since 1903. I worry about what happens when 6,000 white folks show up to a place where there were 3,500 African Americans who had developed, again, such a rich history and tradition of Black intellectual brilliance, Black cultural production. Beyond the personal reason here, right? Like, this is personal for me, because this is my alma mater. Let me see if I can be scholarly here and offer a handful of other reasons. Why don't we start with some historical reasoning for why more Black students must choose Black colleges? I would argue that we ought to do it for historical consistency. You see, these institutions historically have been anchors in Black communities. We ought to be consistent in delivering to Black communities a cultural epicenter, an economic epicenter, a place that's going to create jobs for Black folk who live in Black communities in ways that historically Black colleges and universities have been doing from the start. It's consistency, historically. I would also argue, and I learned tonight, that this is not your original campus birthplace. You were somewhere else before you came here. What I also learned is that your coming here was met with tremendous resistance. Black folk had to fight for Morgan to be here. We ought to honor those folk. We ought to honor the fight that they fought to ensure that Morgan lives forever. Then there is our indebtedness to our waymakers. Mary McLeod Bethune, for example. A year ago, I published the first chapter in Walter Kimbrough's book. In that first chapter, my colleague and I wrote about Mary McLeod Bethune's fundraising success. See, we studied what it was that made Bethune such a giant at procuring resources for the Daytona School for Colored Girls, which eventually then became Bethune-Cookman. Mary McLeod Bethune attached a basket to her bicycle. She baked sweet potato pies and wrapped them in aluminum foil, and she rode that bicycle through Daytona Beach, Florida. She sold sweet potato pies to raise money for Bethune-Cookman. We owe it to Mary McLeod Bethune for Bethune-Cookman to live forever. We owe her that. We owe it to the folks who engineered the master plan that became Tuskegee and delivered it so masterfully and so brilliantly. We owe it to them. Historically, this is historical reasoning. But let me also offer a set of philosophical reasons. These are perhaps grounded in no evidence. They're just my philosophical stances. I believe that Black folk are entitled to things that are ours. Philosophically, I believe that we deserve to have something that's ours. Now, that doesn't mean that other folk can't have access to it. You know, the thing about historically Black institutions that greatly differentiates them from the places where I work is that never ever did Morgan put a sign on the door that said no white people allowed, no Latinos allowed, no Asian Americans allowed, no international students allowed. We've always opened our doors to all kinds of folk. But I think it was clear to them, as it was to us, that this is a historically Black place and space. I just believe the Black folk ought to have something that's ours. I just feel very strongly about that. I also believe that students deserve to be taught in what we call culturally sustaining ways. My favorite Morgan alum, Gloria Lassen-Billings, has written about culturally responsive pedagogy. I believe that black students are entitled to learn about themselves. They're entitled to move us beyond the moment that Carter G. Woodson so famously wrote about in The Miseducation of the Negro, in which Woodson argued that in every book that he studies, every class that he enters, the Negro reads nothing but stories of his inferiority. I believe that there ought to be spaces of truth-telling about the allness, not just the one-sidedness, the multidimensionality of black folk and black cultural history. I don't have children. If I had children, though, I would insist that they ought to know some things about black people. They're guaranteed to learn it here at Morgan. I also philosophically absolutely reject the premise that just because it's white, it's right. I have a scary suspicion. In fact, this is not a suspicion. I know I'm supposed to be doing like philosophy here. I'm not supposed. This ain't the part where I'm supposed to talk about research. But I have to tell you that I do a lot of research with black students at predominantly white institutions, as a matter of fact. And I ask them, "Why did you pick this place?" And they're like, "Oh, well, they told me this was better." Just because it's white don't mean it's always right. Furthermore, and that wasn't an anti-white sort of statement. I have white friends. I think what I'm doing here, though, is just rejecting the presumption that anywhere where there are a whole bunch of black people, nothing good could be happening there. It must be of lower quality. I know that firsthand to be a lie. I also philosophically believe that historically black colleges and universities actually deserve to profit from black people's dollars, black spending. A whole bunch of black people are spending a lot of money in Pell Grants and loans on higher education right now, more than ever before, as a matter of fact. But yet, 91% of them are spending their black dollars at predominantly white businesses that don't serve them well. I believe that black colleges deserve to have a portion of those black dollars that are being spent on the enterprise called higher education. I just feel very strongly about that. All right, listen, I'm going to get off my philosophical soapbox here, and I'm going to get into some other reasonings. Let's go cultural. I'm not a cultural anthropologist or any of those things, but I do have tremendous appreciation for culture. I'm deeply studied, as a matter of fact, on black culture. So I'm going to ask you to do two things at one time. I'm going to ask you to continue to listen to me as I talk with you, but I'm going to ask you to simultaneously listen to me and watch Justin. So I'm here, Justin's there. Justin is at Jefferson Davis High School in Montgomery, Alabama. Jefferson Davis is 93% black. That's very black. Now, I think what I'm calling for here is cultural preservation. You know, there's a way that Justin's people, historically, have taken things that don't belong to them and co-opted them culturally. I'm not arguing that Justin ought not be the lead drum major at a school that is 93% black in Alabama. That is not my argument. I don't know Justin. I bet he's a nice kid. Justin's got some moves. As a matter of fact, he's got some moves. You're going to see him in just a second. I mean, he's queuing them up right now. Justin is about, listen, look at him. Go, Justin. Justin's got moves. Justin's moves now do feel a bit technical to me, but he's still got the moves nonetheless. I'm not suggesting that Morgan ought not extend an offer of admission to Justin and have him come and be in your band, be your lead drum major. That is not my argument. My argument, though, is that if we don't sustain black culture, who will? We have seen time and time and time again the project of gentrifying a space that was culturally black, co-opting the blackness. You know, it's kind of how, like, in Washington, D.C., there are these upscale, now fried chicken joints where a three-piece costs $25 in mostly white gentrified neighborhoods, right, that were once black. I think what I'm saying here is that I really like Justin's moves. He's good. He should go be a drum major somewhere. But I am afraid that if we don't get serious about sustaining black colleges, that all the drum majors and all the bands are going to be like Justin. I worry. All right, let me get to some curricular reasoning. I'm going to start with two very short video clips, and then I'll tell you why I showed them to you.
The National Assessment of Collegiate Campus Climate, also known as NAC, is a quantitative survey that will be administered annually at hundreds of participating colleges and universities across the United States. Through the NAC, thousands, perhaps millions, of college students will offer useful insights into the realities and complexities of race in higher education. NAC respondents will help us understand how various populations differently experience the colleges and universities they attend, where and what they learn about race, their feelings of preparedness for citizenship in a racially diverse democracy after college, and how racial issues in our broader society affect interactions and experiences on campuses. The USC Race and Equity Center will help institutional leaders use NAC survey results to improve racial climates, college experiences, and student outcomes.
I feel like when I speak about the way that I get treated on my campus sometimes, that no one else is willing to take it as seriously as I do. A survey would be great to give power to our voices, especially if the results could confirm the things that we have been saying and trying to convince the administration and our peers that are white on our campus that we are experiencing. Every voice of every student needs to be heard, needs to be understood, needs to be given credit, needs to be given value.
So we launched this national survey earlier this year, and it has since been administered to more than 250,000 undergraduates at community colleges and four-year institutions across the country. One of the experiences that young man that you just saw in the second video, he said, I wish that we had a survey that could help our peers and our faculty members and administrators understand what we have been trying to communicate about the realities of our experiences. I'm paraphrasing. One of those realities that is coming through loudly and clearly through the survey results from black students at predominantly white institutions is that they're absent from the curriculum. They don't read a thing about themselves, you know, unless they slip and fall into a sociology of race class or into an African American studies course. I think what I'm trying to argue here, this is going to be my Marva Banks thesis here. Marva Banks taught me at Albany State University. See, the thing is, Marva Banks introduced me to Alice Walker, to the writings of Frederick Douglass. I read Toni Morrison in Marva Banks' courses. I read things about black folk and by black folk from a black woman who taught me those things. But when I left Dr. Banks' class and went to my next black professor's class, we did some version of that same thing. Blackness was integrated across the curriculum. Now, I don't know, like maybe some of you haven't had the misfortune of having to be a student at a predominantly white college or university. But I'm just going to give you some insights into the experience. The experience for the overwhelming majority of black students there is erasure in the curriculum. The cultural reasoning that I'm presenting here, I think only exists here at Morgan and at places like Morgan, other HBCUs. It's a place where a black person is guaranteed to have a proper course of study in black things. Yes, you will learn other things about journalism. Yes, you will learn other things about mathematics. But you're also going to learn that not all black folk are broken. You're also going to be pushed beyond deficit, one-sided, very racist narratives about who black people are in a place like this. I don't trust another institution type to deliver on what I know to be the cultural consistency with which education is done at HBCUs. Let me move on to some financial reasoning. The architects of the project that merged my historically black university with a white school 2 years ago claimed that it was financial, that the enrollments were really stagnant and in some instances, in some years declining at both institutions. So there was a financial rationale. Well, let's put them together. We ought to protect black colleges from being put together with other institutions that are not culturally, historically, and otherwise black for the mere sake of finances. I think we owe it to the folk who came before us to ensure the sustainability of these places. Of course, there was the crisis that we saw playing itself out in front of our very eyes in the news about Bennett College being on the brink of financial ruin. This article in the Chronicle of Higher Education, the journalist here had interviewed a lot of alumni of Bennett who were saying that we gotta fight to keep Bennett open because it is a pathway of social mobility, a pathway from poverty to the middle class for black women. There are only 2 historically black colleges for women in the United States, Spelman and Bennett. We can't let Bennett close. It's too important for the career trajectories of black women, for the recognition that black womanness is beautiful and powerful and brilliant. That kind of affirmation of black womanness is not going to occur in other places where she's only 2% of the population, where she has no black women on her faculty to look up to as role models, to say to her, you real smart, you ever thought about being a professor? We owe it to the black professions to ensure that there is a steady supply of very confident black folk entering these various industries. Then there was this New York Times article. This article is a mess, by the way. HBCUs are in a sink or swim moment. What's the argument? Sinking ought not be an option. Mary McLeod Bethune was simply unwilling to let Bethune-Cookman sink. She did all she could to ensure its sustainability and its viability because she loved black children. She loved black folk. She's good friends with Eleanor Roosevelt, so she loved white people too. But the point here is that there was such commitment to this project of creating educational opportunity for African Americans at a time of tremendous financial hardship and distress. If Mary McLeod Bethune could do that in the early 1900s, certainly we could do a better job of ensuring the financial sustainability of these institutions in 2019. All right, let me, before I tell you how we do that, let me conclude with my final category of reasoning here. It's what I'm going to call moral reasoning. I am arguing that there is a moral imperative for more black students and their families to choose Morgan. This line of reasoning has nothing to do with Morgan, as a matter of fact. It has to do with, for instance, the Southwest Baptist Theological Seminary. You know, I tend to think of seminaries as pure, holy, angelic places. But at this particular one, in April 2017, white professors dress up as black gang members, black thugs. You know, the caricature of what they think that black thugs look like and how they behave. These professors who are white, dressed up in these things, photograph themselves and put it on social media. It wasn't even Halloween, it was April. At the University of Georgia, in my home state. You know, let me say a word about the University of Georgia, as a matter of fact. You know, I'm real proud to have gone to Albany. But, you know, I wasn't smart enough when I was in high school to understand what it meant for black students from my high school who got to go to the University of Georgia, what that meant for them. I don't think I was jealous of them, that wasn't it. But I was like, wow, you got into the University of Georgia. You got into Georgia Tech. That must be amazing. I had no idea the racism that awaited them at these institutions. Yeah, okay, so here in March 2019, there's a video that emerges of fraternity members, white fraternity members, pretending to whip each other while saying, "Pick my cotton," and using various racial slurs. One of those racial slurs is the N-word, as a matter of fact. This past March, at Kansas State University in November 2017, the university has to cancel classes for 2 hours to combat a noose and racist flyers that have been peppered and distributed across the campus. Black folk there, students, faculty, and staff alike, were saying, we don't feel safe here with all of this racist propaganda that is showing up on our campus. Smith College, last year, an employee calls the campus police on a black student who looked out of place. The employee was white, by the way. Why did the student look out of place? Because she was in pajamas. Why was she in pajamas? She was in a student lounge. Students are, I don't know what students do here at Morgan. Do they wear pajamas and lounges here when they're studying? Maybe they do, or I don't know. Like, maybe that's like weird here. But at the places where I worked, there's people in pajamas all the time. In her case, she just happened to be a black woman in pajamas who was mistaken for a trespasser. Imagine her going to class the next day after the police has come to question her sense of belonging. Do you think she belonged, that she felt like she belonged when she went to class the next day? Just a couple more. University of Arizona, just a couple months ago, 2 white male students beat and yelled racial slurs at a black student outside of a campus residence hall. And then there was American University, just right over there in DC. I need not tell you that AKA stands for Alpha Kappa Alpha. Bananas hanging from a noose with AKA written on them. An AKA member had recently been elected student government president there at American. These were white people's way of telling her that they did not support her election. This is violence. It's racial violence. It is immoral, as a matter of fact, to have so many black people, 91% of black college goers, going to places where they are going to experience varying degrees of this. It is immoral. And then there's the lie that, oh, but these institutions are going to serve them well. The truth is, even beyond the experiential racism, predominantly white institutions chronically do a terrible job of creating equitable educational outcomes for black students. Isaiah Simmons, a research associate in our center, the USC Race and Equity Center, and I published this report card a year ago with generous support from the Ford Foundation. This report includes every non-specialized, by non-specialized we mean military academies, community colleges, historically black colleges and universities. But beyond those sort of special mission institutions, it includes every public four-year college and university in the country. The report card is organized by state. You can go to the Maryland page and see the data for the University of Maryland and for Towson and Salisbury and the others that are here. We demonstrate empirically and irrefutably, using quantitative data from the U.S. Department of Education and other data sources in this report, that predominantly white institutions are systematically underserving black students. I never heard a black student who went to a HBCU say that I was systematically underserved by that place. This is a common, ordinary, everyday experience at predominantly white institutions. It makes me feel like it is immoral for us to not do more to protect the humanity, the brilliance, and the potential of black students. We got to get more of them here. It brings me back to Beyonce. Let me say why, again, I was so inspired. It wasn't just the film that inspired me. Oh, by the way, I was in the band at Albany State. I played drums. So, I mean, I really was getting my whole life as I was watching Homecoming. But I was doing, I'm not a millennial. I'm too old. I'm too old to be a millennial. But I was doing a thing that millennials do, where like they're watching something and they're also engaged on social media at the same time. So I'm watching Beyonce, but I'm also watching my Twitter and my Facebook, and I see just all these black folk, my friends, who went to black colleges who were just so inspired and so excited. But I also saw a bunch of my friends who were black professionals who went to predominantly white institutions who were saying, man, Beyonce got me wishing that I had gone to an HBCU. It then became an empirical question for me. Well, why didn't you? Why would you perhaps not send your children to an HBCU? So here's where we are. In early 2020, the USC Race and Equity Center, in partnership with numerous historically black colleges and universities across the country, will launch what we are calling the Campaign to Increase HBCU Enrollments. This is our way of getting more black students and their families to choose Morgan and Albany State and Fayetteville State, Winston-Salem State, North Carolina A&T, Coppin, Howard, all of them, right? Like, this is a project that will entail social and digital media. It's a nationwide campaign that is intended for all of us, right? That will include a social media campaign using hashtags and curated assets, digital assets for people to share, through their social media platforms, both individuals as well as whole institutions. it will be a way of galvanizing alumni, not just alumni of one place, but a whole universe of alumni of HBCUs across the eras, across the decades, to sing in a unified voice about why more black students must choose black colleges. We are going to leverage our access to celebrities there in Los Angeles. We know who they are. We have access to them, who are alumni of HBCUs. We have a broadcast studio in the USC Race and Equity Center. We are going to bring black alumni of HBCUs to our broadcast studio and have them speak powerfully about the importance of sustaining these institutions. I'm hoping to get Beyonce to wear the campaign t-shirt and put it on her Instagram. We are also creating for and with the HBCUs. We're not just going to sit in our ivory tower at the University of Southern California and do this in an all-knowing kind of way. We're doing this in coalition with HBCU presidents and with others, faculty members who work at HBCUs, right? So we're going to create these game plans, these strategies, these strategy toolkits that really focus on bolstering enrollments. I honestly believe that it is going to be enrollments that save the day for most HBCUs. And for that reason, we are really excited about launching this campaign. You know, part of this is, in fact, it's mostly coming from a pure place, a place of love for Morgan. But it's also coming from a place of being just fed up with what happens, the racial violence that black people experience at predominantly white institutions. So that's going to be part of the campaign as well, raising the consciousness of what is going to happen to your black son if you send him to this place that has no black faculty. This place that just keeps arresting black people because they think that, oh wait, they ain't supposed to be here. Part of the campaign, as a matter of fact, is going to entail videos of young black women and men and genderqueer students talking about the terror that they experience, the erasure that they experience, how if they had to do it all over again, they pick Morgan. I honestly believe that this is going to be the way to equip more HBCUs, not just with the rationale and the justification, but also position you to procure more resources from your state governments, from your state higher education systems, and so on. It's going to have to be through enrollments. I'm hoping that the campaign is successful and that it yields tremendous fruit for Morgan and every other HBCU in the country. So I will stop here and invite your questions and some conversation with you. Thank you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Is my microphone on now? Good. Well, thank you for that inspiring talk. You know, I hear some echo here. About 3 years before you were born, I actually went to University of Georgia. And that was 11 years after they had sort of integrated.
Sort of.
But they were not ready for us when my cohorts got there in 1972, and we felt we were still fighting the battle of integration. But we were envious of all those people at Albany State and Savannah State, and anytime we could get away, we tried to, because that was our escape. So it's interesting to hear that you sometimes thought about how we were so privileged to have gotten into University of Georgia. As people come to the microphones, we have microphones on either side of the auditorium here. Let me get some clarity here. Much of your work has taken place in the space of predominantly white institutions where you have been advocating for them to become more hospitable, more accommodating, more nurturing, and safer for people of color and others, right? Are you giving up on that and pushing now for more blacks to go to HBCUs, or how do you square those two actions?
For me, it is a both-and endeavor. I'm not going to give up. You know, somebody asked me recently, if I love black colleges so much, why don't I work at one?
That was going to be one of my questions.
My response to that is that black folk are needed everywhere. We need me, in fact, fighting for black liberation and for the humanity of black folk in predominantly white spaces. We need me to do that. There are so many people here at Morgan and at Coppin and at all the other HBCUs to do the great cultural preservation work here, to do what you've been doing from the start here. You don't need me here to do that. I feel like the world needs me right now to disrupt white supremacy in the ways that really undermines black people's humanity, threatens their safety, has them question their intellectual prowess. So no, we're not giving up. I think I have reached a moment, though, where, and I really do have Beyonce to thank, in part for this, right? Where I understand that there's an opportunity, leveraging various sources of media to raise public consciousness about the goodness that happens here and the terror that happens there.
Why would USC be interested in helping you to push this message? When wouldn't it be perhaps taking away from the candidates who might choose USC?
You know, let me not be hypocritical. I spent a decade on the faculty at Penn. I recruited a whole bunch of black people to Penn. In fact, I think all of my PhD advisees that I recruited, all of them were black. I have 6 black PhD students now at USC. Every one of them is black. I'm constantly saying to my university and others like it, you say you don't know where to find black people and people of color for your graduate programs? You ought to go to Baltimore and recruit them. They got them at Morgan. They're real smart, and I can assure you that they're prepared to succeed. You should go and recruit them. So, you know, for me, I do, in fact, I went to Indiana University for graduate school. I understand that there are particular networks and particular opportunities, doors that could be opened for folk when they go to graduate school, most especially at some PWIs. But yeah, I think your question is about USC. I don't know why USC fooled with me. I don't know. The thing is, if USC were truly interested in having more black students, the things that I'm saying, and you know, certainly the project that will be this campaign, will be no threat at all for them. There's enough to go around.
How did USC do in your report card, by the way?
We're private.
No, right.
Yeah, it was all public institutions.
Schools. Okay, we'll start over here.
Good evening, Professor Shipp. Good evening, Dr. Harper. My name is Dr. Michael Sinclair, and I'm a professor here at Morgan State University. My concern is the legion of young African Americans that have been caught up in the juvenile justice system. that are now yearning to get an education, how can HBCUs start to educate those people that even the Black community have left behind? Because I'm a social worker, and I believe as a social worker, people can grow and people can change. So a lot of our young people, particularly in Baltimore City, are being caught up in the justice system when they're 13, 14, 15 years old and have felonious records that are disqualifying them to apply for Howard and other HBCUs. But they want to be educated, and I think that HBCUs stand as a leader in educating the Black community, and they ought to be taking a chance with our young people.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. That is a part of this campaign, as a matter of fact. Our country has a disgusting habit of throwing away people whom it incarcerates. I'm going to argue in this as a part of this campaign that Black folk who have been incarcerated absolutely deserve a second chance, and that we got to have stronger partnerships between universities and prisons to create a pipeline to opportunity and prosperity. We have a blueprint for this, as a matter of fact. HBCUs, especially public HBCUs, have done such a great job of moving folk like me out of poverty into the middle class.
Right.
The year I went to Albany State, my single mother made $9,000, right? And now here I am sitting on the stage with you, right? Imagine if we took that same framework that has been tried and true and thought about it in the context of creating pathways from prison to the middle class, getting more incarcerated persons to think about choosing HBCUs, as a matter of fact, for their post-secondary destinations. Just a heads up, there are a lot of predominantly white institutions right now that are jumping on the bandwagon to get more incarcerated persons. I'm not so sure that it's because they care so deeply about Black people who are in jail and prison. I think it's because they want their Pell Grants. It's because they want their student loans. They want their tuition payments to sustain themselves. See, for us, it won't be just about the financial, but it would also be about, we care about this person because we know other people like this person. They're in our own families, as a matter of fact. My middle brother has been to prison 3 times. So this has really serious personal resonance with me. All right, okay, listen, I probably better be more succinct.
Yeah, we got a line of people.
All right, okay, fine.
So no one else get in line. We're going to have trouble trying to even get to those in line, but we'll try our best. Keep the questions short, and we'll try to keep answers short.
All right.
All right, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Billy Best. I'm a doctoral student here in the Community College Leadership Program at Morgan State. And I had two short questions. One is, could you just elaborate on how you will be collaborating with the K through 12 urban areas with your HBCU project as a pipeline to get people to come to the HBCUs? And my second question to you is, I've been reading some of your stuff, your books and all, and papers, and I've been watching you. And do you think that you may one day go into the political realm to try to run for president of the United States or something like that? Seriously?
Nope.
No?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
So question one.
Yeah. How succinct was that for
That was very
That
succinct
was
for
very
question
succinct.
2. But his question 1 was?
Question 1, yeah. So when I lived in Philadelphia, I worshiped at the largest church in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Several thousand people worship there. Part of our strategy, people be telling lies on Black folk. Like, one of the lies right now is that, oh, black folk ain't going to church no more. Listen, black folks still go to church. There were thousands of them in my church in Philly, as a matter of fact. So part of the campaign strategy, it involves a church strategy, especially with large congregations of people. You know, this really is a literacy campaign, like helping people to be more aware of the cultural assets of HBCUs. So we're going to go to where there are thousands of black people. Part of the campaign will also entail having materials. I'm trying not to call it propaganda, but you know, like things with like the campaign hashtag and slogans from the campaign and stuff that, you know, will be at music festivals and other places where young people are. Part of it, I'm hoping that this will happen in Baltimore, where there will be a door knocking campaign. I'm not going to run for Congress or president, but it's not beneath me to use some of the strategies that politicians use to raise public consciousness to get people to the polls to vote for them. I'm trying to get people to your registrar's office, right, to become students here. That.
Mm-hmm. Over here.
Hello, my name is Brittany Peterson. I'm the social media manager here at Morgan State University and a second-year doctoral student in the Higher Education Administration program. First, I want to say I was very intrigued by your topic. I'm very passionate about HBCUs and everything black. Oftentimes in class, and Dr. Sidney Evans is my witness, I speak, Mr. Sidney Evans is my witness. I often talk about how I want to work at, I aspire to be an HBCU president, and I want to work at the struggling HBCUs.
Yes.
And I hear a lot, your career isn't going to last long, the institution is going to fail because we have to diversify. So my question is, what advice would you give to aspiring HBCU presidents when we are often told that we must be willing to create a new vision, diversify our future institutions, and adopt a new business model in order for our institutions to survive and to survive in our future role?
Everything that you just said is right. My advice, though, would be to do it in a way that doesn't further sustain the project of anti-blackness. What do I mean by that? As I said before, we've always welcomed folk here, and we should continue to do that. That's a really important thing. Diversity is important. There is a way to be simultaneously diverse, but also very serious about preserving the black cultural assets of this place. So I would say, do both. What I will also say, though, this is not going to be succinct. We're doing real bad on this. What I will also say, though, about innovating, you got to innovate technologically. That's also going to be a part of the campaign, by the way. We are partnering with a tech organization, you know, to leverage technology in some important ways. But let me tell just a real quick story. It'll be real fast. I give a scholarship occasionally to high school students. I gave one this past summer to a young man who was going to Tuskegee. He came by the center to get the check. And before I handed it over to him, I was like, listen, you got to keep in touch. I want to be a part of your journey to and through Tuskegee. I didn't realize he was going to be as in touch as he is. He's pretty in touch, actually. It's amazing. It's great. I feel like I'm there with him. But one thing that struck me, when he got there for orientation, he sent me a picture of his permit to register. It was an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that had been clearly like cut. It had been manually cut because it was crooked. On the top of, you know, the sheet, the half that he had, there were these lines that were printed. One of the lines had a date stamp on it. You know, like the old school, like, date stamp. The other lines had his information, like, handwritten, and it wasn't his handwriting. It did make me wonder, what in the 1988 is this? Is Tuskegee really still registering students this way? It feels most inefficient to have somebody cut the paper, then date stamp the thing, and then handwrite, and it just seemed technologically not cutting edge. That's got to be a part of this too. Now, you are in the Cutting Edge Club. I saw your folk yesterday at EAB, which is an organization that provides tech solutions for student retention and other kinds of things, and it was great to see one of your vice presidents there. But yeah, I would just say that, like, you definitely have to innovate. Sure, you got to diversify, but don't diversify at the expense of black folk.
Next question over here.
Kind of short, sorry. Hi, my name is Dawnette. I am a multi-platform production major in the School of Global Journalism. And I just wanted to ask you, lately on Twitter, I mean, not really lately, but every once in a while, this argument kind of pops up on Twitter, PWI versus HBCUs. And the HBCU students are always going on about how their schools are better, and PWI students are coons and sellouts, and that they don't really respect themselves. And the PWI students are coming out saying that HBCUs are broke and the education is not good and yada, 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 just like constant arguing. So I was wondering, like, do you think your project would maybe work to kind of address some of the hate within our own community? Or?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, it is going to. We've thought a lot about this. We've thought a lot about it. Mm-hmm. This campaign isn't going to be just about feelings and opinions. We're bringing some evidence to the table. There'll be a series, as a matter of fact, of digital images and of printed posters that include particular stats about HBCUs. For example, the ways in which HBCUs overproduce black folk who go on to pursue and earn PhDs, right? You do more than your fair share there. It will include stats like the bachelor's degree origins of folk who are in particular places. For example, when I was at Penn, I don't know how I got on this one day, but I started just like taking note of like all the black professors there who had gone to HBCUs. And I made a discovery. More than 2/3 of the black faculty at the University of Pennsylvania got their start at HBCUs. So that weakens this myth that somehow the education at these places is substandard. Lies. These people are tenured, full professors. They're famous at an Ivy League university. And they went to places like Tennessee State. Like, what are you talking about? Like, these are lies. So part of the campaign is going to be to dispel the lies with evidence. Last thing I'll say here is that, you know, when we look at Congress over time, where Congress people went to school, a whole bunch of them went to HBCUs. I don't think people know that. Black CEOs and such. Yeah. So yeah, we're going to get past the sort of your school raggedy, nah, my school racist. We're going to get beyond that and like have a much more substantive, facts first kind of campaign around this.
Okay. Let me do a time check. We're at 7:56. So you willing to go a little longer?
Sure, I could stay here all night.
Well, okay.
I'm having an amazing time.
Well, we'll try to take everybody in line now, but nobody else. And let's keep everything tight. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for coming. I'm Jeffrey Pearson, and I was wondering how your campaign is going to possibly address that. A lot of that mindset starts early, and we kind of, if you have collected any data to show that there are a number of African-American families who are starting to send their children to private schools in middle school and high school, and it's actually draining resources from some of the local public high schools and middle schools and even some of the educators from that, and how that mindset is basically affecting students wanting to go to HBCUs.
Yeah, you know, a super interesting thing that's happening right now is that there is an unprecedented, like, high number of black families who are suddenly homeschooling their children. Because both options, the other alternatives are both terrible, right? I do think that the anti-blackness starts early. That if it's mostly black, then it must not be good. So I don't know necessarily that the campaign, will go all the way back to preschool and all that stuff. It could. You suddenly now have me thinking that I bet there is an incredibly talented black illustrator somewhere currently enrolled at an HBCU who, if she had the resources, which we could procure for her, she could illustrate a children's book. We could start that early, actually. Not a thing I was thinking about, but we should have a children's book as a part of the campaign.
Part of the propaganda.
Part of the propaganda.
Right.
The material resources
Right.
of the campaign.
Okay.
Dr. Harper, my name is Richard Taylor. I'm originally from Mississippi, Jackson State University. You didn't mention us, but Jackson State University. I'm also a doctoral student here at Morgan State University in the Community College Leadership Doctoral Program. And I want to say kudos to you and congratulations on your new position. I am also a Star Scholar.
Yeah.
I am also a member of the AERA.
Thank you for your AERA membership.
Absolutely. My question to you is somewhat in line with some of your literature that I've read in regards to one of the books that you've written in regards to from preschool to PhD. My dissertation is going to be basically dealing with some of the barriers and challenges that African American males face while working in an administrative role at a PWI, because that's one of my roles. I would love to be at a PWI like you so I can go and steal and bring back to my people as well. So can you tell me some of the challenges or some of the barriers that you personally face? Maybe three. Just give me maybe three.
Maybe one.
One,
big
just
one.
one.
I knew
Okay,
you were going
one.
to say that.
Just one. I'll take one.
Yeah, no, this is really good. Thank you. Thanks for all that. That was really, really generous of you. Thank you. The curricular erasure of black folk is a thing that I continually come up against in the places I work. To be sure, I teach about us in my courses. I just wish more of my colleagues did. And I wish they did it in a way that wasn't only about like what's wrong with us. I'm not sure. So I support your aspirations, whatever they are. But I'm not sure that it's always good for HBCUs. Now, I probably shouldn't say that. What I was going to say that I'm not saying, and I know you want me to say it real fast. See, sometimes I need time to like work these things out in my head. There's a lot of anti-blackness that occurs at predominantly white institutions. I would hate for an aspiring administrator to go off to one of those places and then bring that anti-blackness back to Morgan. We don't need that at Morgan. I'm certain. Yeah, that's all I got on that one. Sorry. But I appreciate the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Okay, over here.
Hey, good evening. My name is Janine Jackson. I'm a graduate student in the psychometrics program. Thank you for being here. I've been revising this question over and over in my head. Inshallah, the campaign will be very successful and enrollments will increase, but I do think that in addition to enrollment is retention. That's another point that needs to be examined because a lot of times the students come but are unable to stay. In addition, we're also competing with the other institutions because of the this movement to decrease the weight of the SAT and ACT for enrollment decisions. Could you speak to that and how your campaign would address something like that? And do you think that we need to move in that direction?
Yep, I do. It's easy for me to start where you ended. I would love to see, and I'm going to work this out with your president, I would love to see just a whole movement among HBCU presidents to say we're done with the SAT and the ACT. We're done. We're done with it. Because you are right. A bunch of predominantly white institutions are in this moment right now where they are experiencing enrollment declines, and those declines are expected to increase exponentially by 2025. That's not that far into the future. I was just at a Gates Foundation meeting last week where my program officers and I were talking about this. So we ought not be disillusioned that suddenly PWIs who have been so beholden to these standardized admissions tests as a way to keep us out suddenly have found the light, and they just want to, out of the goodness of their hearts, now have more of us. No, they want your Pell Grants and your student loans and your tuition dollars. That's where this is coming from. And I am afraid, right, that black folk may fall for the okie doke on this if we don't get more HBCUs to, as a collective, not just one at a time. So that's where I think we're in a serious moment of strategic opportunity. The PWIs are sort of going one at a time, and they're kind of seeing like, okay, well, if we go first, let's see what the others are going to do. I think if a whole bunch of HBCUs came together and said, yeah, we're done with this, that could be really powerful. It puts you out front.
Okay, over here.
All right.
We got 2 more questions, looks like. Okay.
Hi, I'm Andrea Brooks. I'm also in the doctoral program for CCDLP here at Morgan. And I had just 2 short questions for you. In reviewing the research that you've done, the social justice program is one of AERA's key programs. And given your professional experience and research on equity, as the incoming president, how will you continue to expand and promote research on equitable issues in higher education? And that was my first question.
Why don't we just do one question?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do just this one because I'm visibly excited. Yeah, let's end this on on this note. This is great. So I talked about Gloria Ladson-Billings, my favorite Morgan alum. Gloria is a past president of AERA. Gloria's inspiring example. She's such a courageous scholar and leader. She modeled for me during her presidency how this particular platform could be leveraged to actually do something for black folk and for black children and for racial justice. So yeah, I plan to do just that. I plan to follow Gloria's cue. I plan to do her proud by putting racial equity, racial justice at the center of my presidency and of the presidential conference. You know, I think the people elected me to do that. I have a real responsibility to the people to show up the way that I show up in my scholarship. Unapologetic, bold, always evidence-based. So yeah, that's going to be a real serious, very high priority for me in AERA. There is an HBCU part of this too. One thing that I have found, really weird, honestly, really weird. Most HBCUs have schools of education, but yet it does not appear to me that a table has ever been set for School of Education faculty in the American Educational Research Association. There are black folk who study black things and engage in various forms of scholarship at black colleges. I'm going to set a table for them at AERA. And I don't mean just at the conference. I mean, this is going to be a year-long centerpiece of my presidency, and I'm going to do it in a way that ensures its sustainability, meaning that it doesn't go away, the year that my presidency ends. It is a serious project of mine. I've already asked my good friend and co-author, Ontario Wooden, whom I mentioned earlier, who's the senior administrator at North Carolina Central, to co-lead that campaign. It's going to be a serious project. We're going to set a table for HBCU scholars that has never been set.
Great.
Thank you.
Are you online? No? You online?
Yeah. Oh.
No, this gentleman. Are you online for a question? No, so this is it. All right. We thank you all very much. Can I ask one quick question? Are you also known as DJ Sharper One?
Sorta. There is no DJ. It's just simply Sharper One.
Okay, Sharper One. Tell us about Sharper One.
I am a learner. I love to learn. I know a whole bunch, but I don't know everything, so I love to learn. I had a sabbatical at Penn in 2014. During that sabbatical, I wanted to learn something, but not anything academic. I do too much academics. So I have always wanted to play piano, but I never learned how to do that, or play guitar, or DJ. So during my sabbatical, I decided I was going to go for one of those things. So I went for DJing. I had lessons and everything. And yes, I DJ as Sharper One.
Another talent.
Thank you.
Dr. Wilson. Okay, I have the microphone here. Mine is...
Okay, please join me in giving a round of applause, if you will, to really one of the top scholars in the nation, Shaun Harper. And we have been really, really pleased to be the recipient of all of your provocative thoughts tonight.
Thank you.
And we were counting the number of times that you mentioned the national treasure of Morgan State University, because we respect all 100 plus of our HBCUs, but in our hearts, with all due respect to Albany State. When you walk around the campus of USC, we want you to walk around with this particular swag on.
You got it.
Which represents, if you will, the Morgan State University family that is spread all over the world. And you have promised me that you're going to wear it.
Absolutely. You're going to see me on social media for the campaign in my Morgan sweatshirt.
Okay, so Shaun Harper in a Morgan State University sweatshirt.
Thank you.
And,
Thank
you know, we want to give you something that is as close to an Oscar as we could find. And this is the Oscar of Academe. And so we present this to you. Morgan State University, Growing the Future, Leading the World. Presidential Distinguished Speaker Series, Shaun Harper, November 7, 2019. We thank you very much, Shaun.
Thank you. Thank you. I will treasure this always.